Whitehead, the curator of Blythewold, and I'm going to be giving a series of 5 short sessions on Blythewold, its family and its history. The sessions will be every Friday in May at 10 o'clock in the morning, each one covering a different area. I will start today with a general introduction to the family, who they were and how they came to Rhode Island. This house, as most of you know, was built in 1908, but I'm going to take you back to the 1870s, when Blythewold's founder, Augustus Van Wickle, newly graduated from Brown University in Providence, went to Hazleton, Pennsylvania to manage his father's coal mining companies. It was there that he met Bessie Pardee, daughter of Hazleton's wealthiest citizen, Ario Pardee. Ario was also in the coal business and raised his family in a large stone mansion in the center of Hazleton. So here we have the handsome Augustus Van Wickle, anxious to expand his father's company so that he could ask for Bessie's hand in marriage and keep her in the style she was accustomed to. And here is Bessie Pardee. She was educated at an exclusive girls' boarding school in New York City, Miss Graham's, at 1 Fifth Avenue. Augustus and Bessie married in 1882 at the church in Hazleton that her father had built. There was a reception afterwards for 800 guests at the Pardee mansion. Bessie wore a stunning bridal gown that is preserved in Blythewold's costume collection and is exhibited from time to time. Their daughter Marjorie was born 1 year later in September 1883. Now Bessie was the 12th of 15 children born to Ario Pardee, 12 of whom survived to adulthood. They all built houses in Hazleton and raised their children there. So although Marjorie was an only child, she was always surrounded by many cousins, aunts and uncles. In 1894, Augustus, Bessie and Marjorie travelled to Narragansett on vacation. Augustus was looking for land to buy a summer home. A friend from Philadelphia, Herbert Howe, had already built a home in Bristol, and he sailed down to Narragansett to pick up the family in his Herreshoff yacht. Augustus was so impressed with the yacht that he asked to be taken to the Herreshoff workshops to meet its designer, John B. Herreshoff. That day, Augustus bought a 72-foot steam yacht that had just been completed. He named it Marjorie, after his daughter. The following day, he went to see an estate on the water nearby. This land fulfilled all their requirements, a deep water harbour for their new boat, and 70 acres of fertile land for Bessie to indulge her wishes to create gardens and an arboretum. They bought the land that would later be named Blythewold. They quickly hired Newport architect Francis Hoppin to design and build a large Queen Anne-style home. Here it is. He also built a carriage house and stable complex. A new dock was built, and a beach with sand from Martha's Vineyard for the children, and a tennis court for the adults. John DeWolf, here, a Bristol landscape architect, was hired to supervise work on the property. It was John DeWolf who planted the giant sequoia in the enclosed garden. The house quickly filled with family and friends. Bessie worked on the gardens with John DeWolf to create park-like grounds with the house as its centre. Augustus sailed happily on the bay and took guests down to Newport for the day, serving an elegant lunch on board on the way down, and then to watch the tennis on Bellevue Avenue. Marjorie took art lessons in Bristol, and we have 3 of her paintings from that time in our collection. They are dated 1897, so she was 13 years old and showing early promise as an artist already. Early in 1898, Bessie realized she was pregnant with the child they had prayed for. But in June, as she was at home in Hazleton packing trunks to go to Blythewold for the summer, Augustus went skeet shooting with his brother-in-law. In a terrible accident, he shot himself with his own gun. He was carried home, fatally wounded, and died at the age of 44 at the height of his career. Bessie already 4 months into her pregnancy, spent the summer in mourning at Blythewold, surrounded by her close family. Augustine was born in November of that year in Hazelton, and it was then that Estelle Clements came to live with Bessie as a companion and second mother to Marjorie and Augustine. She lived with them for the rest of her life. Estelle was a dear friend to all the Pardis, and it was discovered only recently that she was, in fact, distantly related. Bessie and her family continued summering at Blythewold, and 3 years later she remarried. William McKee was an old family friend from Rome, Georgia. They moved their principal residence to Boston on Commonwealth Avenue, close enough to spend more time at Blythewold. They were able to spend Christmases and Thanksgiving and other special family occasions here. William McKee was very sociable, and a new era of gracious entertainment began at Blythewold. However, further tragedy befell the family. In June 1906, Blythewold burned to the ground, probably as a result of an electrical fault. The fire was trapped between the ceiling of the 3rd floor and the roof, and there was not enough water pressure to reach the flames. It was a slow-burning fire, and there was time to take out all the furniture and furnishings, even panelling, bathtubs and fireplaces, and all of Bristol came out to help. Bessie soon hired Walter Killam of Boston to design this house on exactly the same spot, using many of the architectural features saved from the old house. And you can see here that it's built on the same site. Both of these are shots that show the front of the house facing the road, but they both faced out onto the bay at the back where all the main rooms were. So happily, life returned to normal in the summer of 1908. In 1914, Marjorie married George Lyon in the enclosed garden here. They made their winter home in Boston on Acorn Street. When war broke out in Europe, George took basic training and went to France as a captain in the US Army. Marjorie, for her part, joined the Red Cross, an association that became part of her life for the next 43 years. After the war, Augustine married Quincy Adams Shaw of Boston. They had 2 daughters, Dee and Marjorie Shaw. George and Marjorie were not so fortunate. They wanted children and even considered adoption, but they remained childless. Bessie died in 1936, leaving Blythewold to Marjorie and Augustine. When William McKee died 10 years later, Marjorie bought her sister's share and became the sole owner of Blythewold. Marjorie followed in her mother's footsteps, working tirelessly in the gardens and welcoming family and friends to Blythewold for weeks on end. She filled the house with flowers every day from the garden. George was a great sportsman, enjoying tennis, swimming, sailing and pool. George died in 1956, after which Marjorie began to travel freely. She took art classes at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and began to exhibit her works. We have over 500 of her paintings, some exhibited in the house and many more stored in a climate-controlled art room on the 3rd floor. Marjorie took her last painting trip to Europe in 1974 at the age of 90 and continued painting and gardening almost to the end of her life. She died at Blythewold in November 1976 at the age of 93, leaving her entire estate to be enjoyed by the public. She is buried at Juniper Hill Cemetery in Bristol. Next week, we will tour the ground floor and see the living room where family and guests gathered in the evenings, the billiard room where the men played pool, and the dining room, the site of so many impressive dinners and celebrations with fine European china, Baccarat crystal, and Tiffany silver. If you have questions, you can email me at mwhitehead@blythewold.org. And if you want to know more about the family, you will find that the book Blythewold, Legacy of an American Family, gives a 200-year history of the family based on primary source evidence with photographs from the family photograph collection. It is available in the gift shop when it opens or by calling Blythewold. In these difficult times, with our wonderful mansion and gardens closed to the public, please consider making a donation to Blythewold so that we can continue these educational programs. Thank you, and I hope to see you next week.